In 3, 2, 1. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday night Bible study class. Tonight we're going to be looking at Psalm 79. Now last week we wrote 77, but we actually looked at 78. Had a miscommunication, so it's not like we're jumping around. So, Psalm 79. Now, for those of you that have been with us for a while, we start by having dinner at 6:30, which, by the way, if you're out and about some night on a Tuesday night at 6:30 and you'd like to stop by, we're on the corner of Wellesley and South 9th in Springfield, Illinois. And we're in the building that's right next to the church. It's called the Community Center. Feel free to stop in. You'll have some dinner, because we always have dinner. I mean, it may not be the most nutritious dinner, but we'll always have dinner. You won't walk away hungry. We're going to feed your body and we're going to feed your soul. So, tonight, well, normally I try to talk about a subject during dinner. So I feel like we're not wasting time. Tonight I didn't do that because I wanted to wait until we got started and tell everybody at the same time. I learned tonight, well, first I should say, before I come to class, I stop at the store and get stuff for dinner. So tonight, I learned the power of the internet. So, I'm standing in line at the deli, and I notice this lady is kind of looking at me oddly. And she defers to me and lets me go first to get my stuff. And as I'm waiting for the lady to cut my stuff, she says, "You're that guy with the prayer group on the internet, aren't you?" And I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "I used to watch you. It's been a couple of years, but I like you." And I said, "Wow, I'm really humbled." She said, "Well, I was trying to learn my Bible and I just got overwhelmed and I haven't done it. And I haven't seen you in a couple of years, but I remember faces." And I thought, wow, so, and if I told you her name, she's highly recognizable in the city of Springfield. So, I was touched humbly, and that she's been watching for at least a couple of years before. So I told her, I said, "We're going to be doing our Bible study class tonight. We'll be on Facebook Live. It would be awesome if you could join us." So we'll see. But I just thought the power, because a lot of times when I come in here, I spend time setting AV equipment up and tearing it down, and computers and cameras, blah, blah, blah. And once in a while you wonder, is it really worth it? I mean, really? But then the end of the week comes around and I look at the numbers, and every week we reach somewhere between 100 and 200 people that hears God's word that was not in our class. And then I think, yeah, it's worth it. And just when I think I'm never going to meet him, somebody walks up to me in the deli. It was awesome. I got off of that story. We are, as usual, at the Harvard Park Baptist Church and Community Center. We're meeting in the Community Center. Is your small group looking for a new place to rent or to meet, where you don't have to pay money, where it's not very crowded? Well, get a pen, and I'm going to give you a number. I want you to write this down: 947-252 2565. You're going to get a voicemail. Leave your info, and they'll call you back. They're probably not going to charge you anything. In fact, I know they won't. But, you know, showing up on Sunday once in a while, throwing a little something in the plate to pay for the utilities would be a good thing. Also, a friend of mine has her own tutoring center. It's called WorldSpan Tutoring Service. She's a licensed teacher here in Springfield, Illinois, and she specializes in kids kindergarten through 4th grade. Reading and math is a specialty. Contact Mickey Shell, or you can text her. You don't have to call. You can text. The number's 217-761-5535. Now, one of the benefits of going live is that I don't get to rehearse any of this stuff. And somebody just threw a piece of paper in front of me. I have no idea why I'm advertising for Chili's restaurant, but here we go.
Christian manager.
Attention, Chili Restaurant is looking for cooks and servers. Apply online at chili.com. Okay. So, oh, she said because somebody out there needs a job. Well, okay. I got it.
He's a good manager, good Christian manager.
I was just informed she handed me that because that manager out there is a good Christian manager. So if you're a Christian in the restaurant business, and I do know a little bit about that, it is hard as it is in any job to be a Christian, but specifically in the restaurant business. So if you're looking for one, go to Chili's. All right, I'm done pushing Chili's. No more. Okay, so we got announcements out of the way. We told you about the power of the internet, which is amazing. Okay, so tonight, Psalm 79. Now some things about this psalm. First, this is another psalm. Remember when we started this third book of Psalms, I said we were going to be in a series of, and I thought it was 10 or 12, I haven't been really counting, we're probably getting close, of psalms that are done by Asaph, is his name, A-S-A-P-H. And he was a contemporary of David. Theologians think he was probably David's assistant. We know he was the music conductor, and we also know from the titles here that he wrote some of the psalms. So, very gifted man from God. Now this psalm, unlike most of them, does not directly portend the future in the psalm. This psalm is a specific prayer written for a specific people in a specific time. Now, and I misspoke. It does tell the future, but it's not like it can or should be wholly applied to today's world. This psalm was written, and theologians believe partially fulfilled when Nebuchadnezzar came in and overtook the Jews, took them to captivity, and destroyed the temple and the entire Jewish state. Just totally dominated and destroyed. Now, one of the things we're going to see as we go through this is a counterbalance to what non-Christians think about God. How many times have you heard somebody say, well, if God is such a loving God, why does he allow, and then fill in the blank? Suffering or sickness or illness or, fill in the blank. Well, today we're going to find out why. One of the reasons why. Is God the same yesterday, today, and forever?
Absolutely.
So if he did it then, chances are he can do it again today. And he could do it again tomorrow. just because the law has changed to grace does not mean that God has changed who he is and how he deals with his people. So that's a little bit of the background. Now in the notes at the foot of my Bible, it talks about the different ways that this psalm can be broken down. As I said, most of this psalm is a prayer, and it's a prayer for the Jewish people to pray during the tribulation that is yet to come. Okay? Now, according to this, it can be broken down into two parts and then four of one. Part one, the lamentation over the national disaster. So something has happened to the Jews in the Jewish land, and they're lamenting over it. The second part is a supplication for divine intervention. Those are fancy words for saying the prayers for God to step in and fix it. Okay? And then it goes further down. There's a prayer for vindication, a prayer for forgiveness, a prayer for reprisal, and a praise for response. So we're going to see as we go through how this psalm is broken down and how it's going to come back up. Now, as we go through, there are some things I want to show you. Okay, so here we go. Psalm 79. O God, the nations have come into your inheritance. Okay. What does that mean? What is your inheritance? When they're talking about God's inheritance, what is that? Where they're talking about the Jews. So what he's saying is, oh God, the outside nations have come into Israel. Jerusalem specifically. Your holy temple they have defiled. Now, I don't know if you are aware of this, but Christians have lots of churches, right? Even in little small towns. Even in the same denomination. Like in the city of Springfield, I would guess there's probably a dozen Baptist churches. For Israel, around this country, they have synagogues. In fact, it's a law, and they still do this, by the way. I was in Taylorville a couple of years ago, and whenever, I believe the number is either 6 or 12, Jews are in one town, they are obligated to build a synagogue. So I met a Jew in Taylorville, and he said, wow, the 6th one just moved to Taylorville. We're working right now to build a synagogue. And I thought, that's kind of cool. But in the old time, there was one temple, and that was in Jerusalem. And that was supposedly inhabited by God. And that is why they have to make that journey once a year at Passover to go be in God's presence. So right now, as a main synagogue, they do not have, the Jews as a nation do not have a synagogue. They are in the process of building one, but they don't have one. They've got little synagogues around the world, but they do not have a main one. But what he is saying here is, he's saying, your holy temple they have defiled. So we know from history that Nebuchadnezzar came in, he took control of the country, and he burned the temple after he robbed it blind. He burned it to the ground. They have laid Jerusalem in heaps. Okay, so they raped, pillaged, and plundered Jerusalem. And by the way, I told you that we were going to see how God deals with his people. If you go back in the Bible and you read about Nebuchadnezzar taking over Israel, he does it with God's blessing. He goes in there and kills the Jews and takes over with the help and knowledge and assistance of God. On purpose. Now, of course, the Jews don't know this at this time. So you ask, well, why would God use a non-believer and their army to wipe out a great majority of Israel? For the same reason, he will send people to hell today. What's the penalty for sin?
Yeah.
Death is now. Does it remember there's Old Testament and New Testament. Death in the Old Testament, for the most part, represented physical death. Remember me always teaching, here's my saying, the Old Testament is an outward and visible sign of a spiritual truth that is manifested in the New Testament. So when we talk about spiritual death in the New Testament, here we're going to see physical death in the Old Testament. So what God is saying is, you have sinned against me, and you've sinned against me over and over and over. And now you're going to learn that the wages of sin is death. Now, I could strike you dead, but I'm going to let your enemies do that. And here's one of the, and we're going to see this later on, but here's one of the things that made that time different than this time. Not really. I guess it's still the same. But back then, if one country beat up another country and destroyed it, it was a reflection on that country's God. As an example, if Israel beat up another country, then the Jews believed that their God was bigger, badder, and stronger than that other country's God. Likewise, if another country beat up Israel, then Israel believed that their God was bigger, badder, stronger than their God. And that was a common belief, which is one of the things that got the Jews in trouble so many times. So they've raped, pillaged, and plundered. And then verse 2, the dead bodies of your servants they have given as food for the birds of the heavens, and the flesh of your saints to the beasts of the earth. So Nebuchadnezzar and his armies have killed so many people that there's not enough people to bury them, there's not enough room to bury them, there's not enough time to bury them. So the birds in the air and the fowl and the animals of the land are eating the flesh. Their blood they have shed like water all around Jerusalem, and there was no one to bury them. We have become a reproach to our neighbors, a scorn and derision to those who are around us. Now, what Asaph is saying here is we are surrounded by enemies of our God all around us. And because Nebuchadnezzar came in here and whipped us up and overtook us and destroyed us, now all the other countries think it's open season on the Jews and that our God has abandoned us. Verse 5, how long, Lord, will you be angry forever? Will your jealousy burn like fire? Now notice that he says, will your jealousy burn like fire? The wages of death, or the wages of jealousy is not death. The wages of sin is death. Why would he say, will your jealousy burn like fire? I agree God is jealous. But one of the sins is having false gods, false idols. So our God is a jealous God, and that was one of the sins. And here is the turning point here, and when you think about it, this is a really funny verse. Pour out your wrath on the nations that do not know you, and on the kingdoms that do not call on your name. Okay, think about that for a minute. God is in the process of destroying them and their country because they would not pay attention to God's word. They were out sinning like the rest of the world. And that he's saying, pour out your wrath on the nations that do not know you.
Leave us alone.
Well,
Is that
no, actually what he's saying is, even though you're destroying us because we sinned and because we turned away from you and because we had false gods, and the list goes on and on and on, we still know you. You're still our God. And God's like, no. You don't know me. If you knew me, you wouldn't have done all these other things. And the second part of that is, and on the kingdoms that do not call on your name. I'm going to press a button here. I don't know what this does. Still don't know what that does. Well, there's a red circle. I wonder what that does. Oh, okay. Well, I don't get it. It's interesting though that we have gone 22 minutes and not one person has joined or left Facebook Live. I don't know what that means. I guess we'll figure it out. Okay. Verse 7, for they have devoured Jacob and laid waste to his dwelling place. Oh, do not remember former iniquities against us. Okay, so now here we start, and he's saying, so we are sinners. Hang on just a minute, please.